If you look here, this is the exact moment where I tore both my meniscus and my ACL. And if you listen very closely, you can hear nothing. That is also the moment where I found out how much misinformation there is out there when it comes to both bulletproofing your knee as well as recovering from knee injuries. Even worse, some of that information will definitely lead to even worse injuries. Since then, I've pretty much regained my full range of motion and made those knees stronger than they have ever been. Squatting double my body weight, deadlifting triple my body weight, jumping, moving, running, absolutely no problem. And today I'll share with you what works best when it comes to bulletproofing your knees, increasing your range of motion and recovering from injury by doing what knees are designed to do. Now, since we want to work with low intensity and build up resistance and range of motion as we progress, using the kneeling hip thrust or the kneeling squat is one of the best ways to start mobilizing our joint and activating the surrounding muscles in a very safe fashion, which is also why it is advised to start with a short range of motion and move lower and lower as you progress, going through as long a range of motion as possible for you without pain and adding assistance at your own discretion, like so, to take off some of the pressure you have on your knees until you can go through a full range of motion all by yourself without assistance. In this case, a full range of motion is not sitting down on our heels, but over time we want to be able to open up slightly, then shoulder width apart and bring our butt into full contact with the ground, which is going to move us into a complete bend in both of our knee joints. Keep in mind that we are actively flexing our glutes and our biceps, lengthening our anterior chain all the way from our abdominals down to our lower knee insertions. And when pushing back, working on progressing far enough to get full ass to grass movements all the way down. Many of you might notice that your range of motion is increasing within the set with every single repetition. And at the very end of your set, I would advise to just sit down in this position, lengthening your tibialis and your ankles, and you're gonna find out very soon why this is so imperative. And if you can't do this without pain, just elevating your butt the slightest bit until you do feel comfortable here, and then reducing that elevation until you are ass to grass is the way to go. This video is sponsored by the YouTube GOAT, which is you. By liking this video, subscribing to this channel and watching the whole thing to the end, you get to feed a middle-aged, middle-class Austrian man for 10 to 15 seconds. And trust me, that would look pretty amazing on your humanitarian resume. Now this will be our best friend today. If you do not have a slanted board, using a yoga block, a weight plate, or if you are literate, books to elevate your heels during some of the upcoming exercises will be very helpful. Now, unsurprisingly, we'll be using some squat variations. However, we will only utilize part of this movement. To be more precise, the upper part of squats by just bending slightly and then extending, flexing our quads as much as we can. Since this is all about quad activation for now, try feeling your quads during the entire movement pattern and work your way up to 20 or 25 repetitions, driving your knees forward, moving into as much ankle flexion as you can before extending all the way with complete flexion, keeping one leg completely extended. We can now put a little bit more resistance on the bending leg, activating exactly the muscles responsible for stronger knees and healthy knee movement. Don't shy away from using resistance if you need a progression step in between the double legs versus the one-legged movement pattern. And work your way up in difficulty by increasing the elevation, which will increase the difficulty of this movement until you can move at the very least into a 90-degree bend in the knee you are working on. The split squat is by far one of the best exercises you can use to strengthen your knees in an open hip position, which is exactly the opposite of squats, where we are always moving with both legs into complete hip flexion. When it comes to working on bulletproof knees, we definitely need to work both, especially since most of our day-to-day movements always get us into this hip flexion, be it through sitting, running, walking, and worst of all, sleeping on your side, basically shortening those muscles for 8 hours a day, which is as much sleep as I hope you are getting, which of course leads to absurd tightness in our hip flexors and quads, leading to a lot of impairment when it comes to our knees and hips in general. So utilizing the same type of progression, we will work on increasing our range of motion for two major reasons. More quadriceps engagement, sure, but also hip flexibility and a massive stretch of our quadriceps, which gets locked up and leads to impaired range of motion both in our hip as well as in our knee. If you have been suffering from knee problems, chances are you've been compensating for both a lack of strength as well as a lack of range of motion by leaning much more on both your hip joint as well as your ankle joint. Even with super healthy knees, hip and ankle mobility are intrinsically connected to our knee mobility, and any problems we have in those joints will move both down our chain as well as up our chain to the other joints. And that is doubly true if any sort of pain is involved, progressing from a half range of motion to a complete range of motion, and then very important, elevating both our front as well as our hind leg for an even longer range of motion to add as much flexibility benefits on one side while adding as much strengthening benefits to our quads and our hip extensors on both sides. Now, as important as our hips in this situation are our ankles, because our feet are the first point of contact with the floor, meaning that any misalignment here will have to be compensated for with the rest of your joints. And if you have a knee injury or decreased range of motion, chances are you are not using your knees to the best of their ability, which will lead you to both fuck up your upper and lower joint by compensating for a lack of strength or a lack of range of motion. And you might be surprised that something as simple as extended leg calf raises can have a very positive impact on your knees when it comes to both their strength as well as their range of motion, even though we're not bending them yet. Because now we can start strengthening our calves while stretching our gastroc, our soleus and our Achilles tendon for better ankle mobility, especially when it comes to flexion, moving into a smaller angle in your ankle, but more importantly, releasing any sort of tension we might have directly behind our knee joint, which will lead to improved range of motion with all the other exercises we've been doing today, especially when it comes to getting into a full ass to grass resting squat. Here comes the most important part. It is on you to test out different variations as well as stress your knees in different ways. And even though our knees are not rotational joints, for instance, like our hips, they still get a lot of rotational forces put on them, especially if you enjoy lifting heavy shit. Which means that subjecting your knees to those rotational forces in a controlled setting will help you make them a lot stronger. In this case, we have two major things to work on: internal hip rotation, or rotating our knee into one direction, putting a lot of force onto our joint, especially the ligaments and tendons, or basically movements where our feet are turned inward. And of course, external rotation, our feet turned outward, which means our hip joint is turned outward, once again putting a lot of rotational force onto our joint into the other direction. A good way to work on those are from a kneeling position, internal hip rotations, moving asymmetrically or unilaterally from one side to the other, as well as what I call asymmetrical pseudo hip thrusts, bringing one knee down and once again activating your posterior chain while lengthening your anterior chain, and reversing by rolling over our toes, once again helping us work on our ankle mobility and stretching our foot musculature. Once again, an amazing bonus to have when working on those things. Leading us to what might be one of the best weapons in our knee strengthening arsenal, which is the classic 90-90 switch. Now combining unilateral internal with external hip rotations, of course, into both directions. Now, I've made a full guide on this last week, you can check it out here, but let's go through the essentials. We have a total of 3 different levels, depending on our progress, with the lowest impact level laying down back flat on the floor, feet flat on the floor, arms opened sideways. And now we're going to combine both the internal and external hip rotation with 0 resistance. Just let your legs fall downwards on one side, reverse the rotation, and let them fall down on the other side. Go through a handful of repetitions, take a short break, stretch your glutes, and then go in for the next set. Then we have a wall-assisted variation with back support, so we can take as much pressure off of our lower body joints as possible. Once again, combining the internal with the external hip rotation, reversing by pushing our back against the wall, making it a lot easier to go through this movement, and repeating on the other side. And of course, from a classic ATG deep squat starting position, now having not only the full range of motion, but also the full strength benefits we can get from this movement pattern. And while getting into this 90-90 seated position is somewhat easy, getting out of it is the hard part. So if you need assistance, just use your hands to help out as much as necessary for you to be able to go through this movement without having any pain. All full range of motion. Which brings me to the next point. I would highly advise when it comes to all of those rotational movements to go through them slowly and progress in tiny increments. Rule of thumb, if you have slight discomfort, that is absolutely fine. However, if you have pain, that is absolutely not fine. You either need to reduce the resistance by using some support or reduce your range of motion until you're back into that comfortable space. And now we have 2 more advanced exercises you can start working on once you have all of this down. We have the classic sissy squat, which now combines everything we've worked on today, from foot stretching to ankle mobility, knee and hip mobility, anterior chain stretching with posterior chain strengthening, and a lot of balance and core engagement. Consider that another bonus, as well as strengthening our hip extensors in an amazing way. And honestly, it's also a very fun exercise to work on. And slightly more advanced yet highly effective is the reverse Nordic curl. Having prepared for this with all of the exercises we did before, we can now start taking our knees through a full range of motion until we can work our way to laying down with our upper back at the very least before we can reverse this movement. You will notice we're now lengthening our entire anterior chain all the way towards our chest while keeping a lot of flexion going on here, and then reversing by using a lot of strength in our anterior chain once more. Of course, doing all of this while flexing both our glutes, our spinal erectors, and our biceps, just so we can stay completely extended and do this movement with real tension and a full range of motion. And with this exercise, I would highly advise you, if you are new to it, to use some sort of assistance, either if you have a TRX band to hold onto and move through an ever-increasing range of motion that you can go through without pain, or doing the same with a resistance band. However, be a little bit more careful with that, because resistance bands have variable resistance, meaning the further you move back, the more pull you will have, but at the very top of the movement, you will have a little bit less pull. Now, since all of these are bodyweight exercises, with most of them being pretty low impact, you can work your way up to 15 to 20, even 25 repetitions per set, just to make sure that you are building the necessary strength and the necessary muscular endurance while conditioning your joint, the surrounding tendons and ligaments. You can take up to 90-second breaks in between every one of these sets and do 2 or a maximum of 3 sets per exercise. All of these exercises have to be done pain-free. Once again, discomfort absolutely fine, pain no. Your session shouldn't take more than 25 to 30 minutes at the maximum, and doing this 2 to 3 times a week will help you progress pretty fast, but also very safely, and that is the most important thing when it comes to our joint health or health in general. With that said, I'll probably see you very soon, so until then, have a good one, Captain Cairo. Peace out.